What's going on, one and all? Seedling Space here, where we like to talk about all the cool activities happening in the space industry to keep y'all up to date on the technological advancements and possible investment opportunities. So with that, let's jump in. Earnings time has come around for all the big aerospace and defense companies. This is actually a pretty common time for most companies to produce their earnings, but we really are just focusing on the aerospace companies. So with that, let's jump in. We will mostly be looking at their revenue, which is all the money the company has earned during the quarter, and the earnings per share, which is the net income divided by the number of outstanding shares. But if you'd like me to do an in-depth technical dive of their fundamentals, like and subscribe to see that video coming up. With that, let's talk about the top 5 US companies by market cap as of Friday, October 30th. Starting with Honeywell International, ticker symbol HON, shows some good performance this quarter by beating expected earnings per share, but missing the estimated revenue by a little bit. Overall, their numbers are pretty solid, but there is some worry that the COVID recovery is moving slower than originally anticipated. Next, we have Raytheon Technologies Corp., ticker symbol RTX, blasted past its expected earnings per share this quarter, even though revenue was just under its estimate. In fact, Raytheon raised its guidance on the annual earnings per share and its free cash flow. Up next is Boeing, ticker BA, missed on both earnings per share and revenue by a good margin. Boeing CEO said that the commercial market is showing signs of recovery and that demand is returning. Unfortunately, difficulty with their 787 is part of the problem, as well as a $185 million charge because of its Starliner delays on the fixed price contract. Next is Lockheed Martin, ticker LMT, beat its estimated earnings per share, but like Boeing, missed revenue by a good chunk as well. Unfortunately, the stock price declined nearly a whopping 12% on a lower revenue guidance driven by supply chain problems as well as other international issues impacting sales. In addition, the acquisition of Aerojet Rocketdyne Holdings, ticker symbol AJRD, is now slated to close first quarter of 2022 instead of fourth quarter this year. Next is Northrop Grumman, ticker NOC, beat its earnings per share but misses on revenue. CEO Kathy Warden says that they did see some labor and supply chain challenges due to COVID, but they will be raising their full year earnings guidance. Alrighty, time for the next one. So last week we talked about Lockheed Martin partnering with NanoRacks and Voyager Space on the Starlab private space station. This week, we have a team of powerhouses making their own submission for a commercial space station called Orbital Reef. This team includes Boeing, Blue Origin, Sierra Space, Redwire, Genesis Engineering, and Arizona State University. These are some really big hitters in this lineup, and it's interesting to see what role each company will take. We can get a small idea from this page here. So according to this article, Blue Origin will be providing the heavy lift with its new Glenn launch system. Sierra Space will focus on using their Dream Chaser spaceplane for crew and cargo transportation. Boeing will help with their Starliner crew spacecraft as well as operations and maintenance of the station. Redwire will take on microgravity research, development, manufacturing, and Genesis Engineering Solutions will be developing a single-person spacecraft for routine operations. And lastly, Arizona State University will leave the effort of wrangling all the universities together for various research services. What I find interesting about their submission is their goal of multi-use. They have an aim for commerce, research, and tourism with the lofty goal of having it ready by the end of 2030. This is slated to be operational 3 years after the Starlab proposal, but looks to be much bigger and more complex. Now, we have to note that while it's a big team, it seems that they are aiming for the full service rather than just the space station itself. Additionally, the tourism component definitely smells of Blue Origin's play, but I'm sure the other companies involved are eyeing that piece of the pie. This is super exciting to see the competition between the proposals, and I'm sure there are more submissions out there for a chance at NASA's commercial space station contract, and I'll keep you up to date whenever those get revealed. Up next in the headlines is Terran Orbital with the announcement that it has inked a deal to go public via a SPAC merger. For those of you who don't know, a SPAC is a special purpose acquisition company which goes public after raising a lot of cash, then merges or acquires a company. Companies do this as a way of going public easier and faster than the traditional method, which helps bring in new cash to grow. Well, anywho, Terran Orbital is a manufacturer and operator of small satellites. According to this CNBC article, the company generated $25 million in revenue last year and is on track for $35 million this year. And they hope to be profitable by 2023 and produce $2.6 billion in revenue by 2026, which is a very lofty goal. Terran hopes to use the $345 million raised from the deal to help begin developing a large manufacturing facility in Florida, which will produce over 1,000 spacecraft per year once operational. This deal values Terran Orbital at $1.58 billion, and the deal is expected to close in the first quarter of 2022. Now, we've already seen a few space companies go public via SPAC mergers. Companies like Rocket Lab, ticker symbol RKLB, and Astra, ticker ASTR. If you want to get in on this company before it finalizes its merger, you should check out Tailwind 2 Acquisition Corp, ticker TWNT, as it is the SPAC which led the fundraise and the IPO. Investing now could get you an early seed into this upcoming company, but make sure you research and do your due diligence to ensure it's the right investment for your portfolio. Up next, we have another fundraising announcement, this time from ABL Space Systems, which has expanded on its Series B funding round held earlier this year and almost doubled its evaluation from $1.3 billion to $2.4 billion. ABL is a small satellite launcher with a system that can launch from pretty much anywhere with a simple containerization for easy deployment. What may be driving this expanded investment craze is the announcement earlier this year that Lockheed Martin will purchase 26 launches through 2025, as well as an additional 32 launches through 2029. However, this is not Lockheed Martin's first interest in the company, since it has been a strategic investor in ABL since 2019. Now, ABL says that the additional funding that it has raised will be used to scale production of the RS-1 launch vehicle, which will take a 1,350 kilogram payload to low Earth orbit for $12 million at a cost of $9,000 per kilogram. If we look at SpaceX's new rideshare program, the same payload would cost just over $4 million, which appears to be a third of the cost. However, the important thing to note is that SpaceX's rideshare is very restrictive, since your choices of launch locations and orbits will be greatly limited, especially when compared to ABL's system, which could theoretically launch from anywhere. So you are effectively paying a premium for launch flexibility. Of course, SpaceX has a proven history of successful launches, whereas ABL is still a startup, having only been founded 4 years ago, so there's a lot left to prove. Yet we will be rooting for them nonetheless, with such an interesting launching model. Last up for this week, we have an announcement from nature itself. The Sun this week emitted a very large coronal mass ejection, which is heading straight for Earth. According to the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, coronal mass ejections, or CMEs, are a large expulsion of plasma and magnetic fields from the sun's corona. No, the sun does not have the vid, nor does it drink beer. Rather, the corona is the outer atmosphere of the sun. But back to the story. These charged particles are blasted away from the sun from speeds starting at 250 kilometers per second up to 3,000 kilometers per second, which is very, very fast. When the charged particles hit Earth, they get caught up in the Earth's magnetic field, which acts as a type of shield. The charged particles then bounce up and down from the North Pole to the South Pole and vice versa, which often appears visually as our aurora borealis. This type of phenomenon is pretty common and typically isn't worth worrying about. However, the intriguing thing to note about this one is the intensity of it. The flare was rated as an X1 class solar flare. Typically, solar flares come in 3 ratings: C class, which is pretty weak, M class, which is relatively moderate, and X class, which are the strongest. The numbering scheme denotes how intense the class is. For instance, X2 is 2 times as intense as X1, and X3 is 3 times as intense as X1, and so forth. The fact that an X1 is coming our way isn't too common, so the question is, should you be worried? Well, the answer is not really. These storms could potentially cause some issues for satellites, which could mess up their navigation and some other types of systems. But the general consensus seems to be that this shouldn't cause any major damage, and in fact, some reports say that it may even push the aurora borealis down south, which could possibly be seen even from Washington state. Well, that's it for this week's highlights. If you would like to see more videos like this, click the like and subscribe button, and I'll see you in the next one. For now, this is Seedling Space, signing out.